guys, on today's episode we are converting the Cortina fuel tank over to EFI using a BA fuel pump. Up to here we've found the best fuel tank that I had. Alright guys, so I've just ripped the fuel tank out of the Corti and I'm telling you, this car is unreal. Like, I'm gonna show you inside this tank, right? This is what came out of the tank. Look at it. Like, have you ever seen anything like this in like a 1972 car at this age? So we'll put this back. But so the sender is immaculate. Has this tank been cleaned out? I think it has, but I'm gonna chuck this torch in. Have a look at inside the tank. Like, have a look at that. It's bloody beautiful. It's like brand new in there. Yeah, so tank's out and we're gonna go send this off to Pro Street Developments, Lee Walker, and he's going to weld in the intank module. And yeah, I'm not confident in my welding thus yet, and I wasn't confident in welding up the tank, so we'll leave that to the pros. We'll get Lee to weld in that fuel pump module, and then I can go along with the fuel system. But yeah, I thought I'd just show you guys that this tank is immaculate. Like, I'm so happy with this buy. It was a steal. So let's go destroy this original fuel tank, and we'll come back once it's all welded up, and we'll start along with the fuel system. Cheers. All right, here we go, guys. So this is the BA fuel pump setup. Did I say that right? BA? Yeah, it is a BA. So I got the steel weld-on ring and the fuel pump module from EFI Hardware, right there if you can see. And I had Lee Walker weld this up. So you can see that Lee's dropped this down. I've given him some measurements to clear the floor, and we've dropped this down, so then later on, once I step it up, I guess the fuel system, I can put those conversion fittings to -8 on here. All right, but for now we're just going to use -6, and I'll go through the fuel system later on. But here you go, guys. So it's all done. I'm stoked with it. It came up mad. Now, we did have the sender unit welded up. So speaking to Lee, he wasn't happy with how the fuel pump module sat and how tight it was going to be with the fuel level gauge, and he wanted to drop this down a bit, and it was going to be pretty close to where it was going to we were going to mount the original sender back in. I said, Lee, just weld it up and we'll sort out the fuel gauge on the cradle somehow. So I'm left with the task of getting this original fuel sender. So this is the original one. And then you can see, so it's just a single wire, right? And then what happens is this is earthed. There's a pin there which earths this whole assembly here. All right, so with the BA fuel pump, we've got a couple of pins in there, if you can see them. Anyways, I'll go through the wiring sides, but we're tasked with somehow, I'm going to have to take this assembly out, and we are going to have to fix this somehow inside here. I've also got this little fitting here, and any guesses as to what we're going to be doing with this? All right, so what we're doing with this is right here, right there. we're going to add a breather. All right. Now, because the fuel pump cradle now is sitting lower than the top of the tank, right? When it's full, this breather line is effectively, it's not breathing at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to get we're going to tap this fitting onto the fuel filler neck, and then we'll run that up to there. I'm probably going to get stuck into that first, and then we'll take the fuel pump cradle out. I'll show you how it looks and how it turned out, and I'll also run through how much we've actually dropped the cradle in. So if you're at home and you want to get a rough idea as to the measurements, if you want those bulkhead type fittings to put the dash 8 screw on type, I've already measured it up, and I'll give you the drop height. All right, that was short-lived. So I just checked my tap sets, and I don't have one to suit. I think it's like 3/8. So I'll have to order one next week, or drop into maybe Total Tools tomorrow, get a tap and sort that out. So gonna get stuck into pulling the cradle out, and let's have a look at how we're gonna mount this fuel level gauge. So that's the fuel pump assembly there. So if you're looking to do the same conversion, it's a BA fuel pump module cradle and the EFI hardware conversion kit to suit. Now, there are a couple of different steel conversion weld-on rings that EFI hardware sell. Make sure you're buying it to suit the BA fuel pump module. I know there's an FG, there's a VE, and then a VX or VYVZ series. So make sure you're getting the right one, because the BA is the one that suits the Cortina tank height. So this is now the assembly. How has it been welded? I believe. Oh yeah, there you go. So. Not sure if you can see, but it's actually been welded around the inner. Okay, so there's a gasket there. I forgot about that one actually. We'll leave that to the side. And yeah, there you go. So it's welded around the lip there. So the measurements now for the little sump or the little drop tank. So what are we at? It's almost 17.5 centimeters by, I'll go down there, by 20.7 centimeters. So 20.7 centimeters and 17.5 by just shy of 4.5 centimeters, so 4.4 centimeters. But that's the measurements there. All right, so now let's get stuck into the fuel level gauge sender unit and how we're going to tackle it to suit that. Wish me luck. All right, so I just quickly masked it up just so, because I don't want to open up this module. And I'm just going to die grind out with the Dremel. It looks like there's just these little tacks here to the tube. So I'll just die grind here out until the sender unit pops off. that's it. I thought I was going to be able to save this fuel neck filler thing, but that's gone. There we go. Alright, so I'm not sure how clear it is, but we'll go ahead and now take send the unit wire off. Now, what we can do is we can use where I've gone through here, we'll use them as maybe the mounting screws to the cradle somehow. Alright, so I've worked out how I'm going to do it. I've bent that up, as you can see, and what we're going to do is this is going to go something like this, and then this wire will go up. I'm going to get a connector, and then so I'm going to make a little plate here, a little aluminium plate. I'll make it to suit here. I'm going to put some self-tappers there, and then I'm going to mount this to that aluminium plate with I don't know, maybe some nutserts through here, and then that will mount something like that. Alright, so you can see here, I've mounted up the plate with some washers, and it's held on around that. And then if you can see, I've drilled through in there, and the screw goes through this, so the inner housing, and also the casing as well. So that's solid as, and I've just marked out where I'm going to sit the fuel gauge sender, and it's going to go something like that there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drill this out, and then we'll put some riv nuts in, and then we'll be able to secure the fuel level gauge sender. Alright guys, so back into it. I ordered a plug for the fuel sender. So this particular fuel pump that I ordered from EFI Hardware, it didn't come with this plug for the sender. So I've ordered that up, and it's come with a little fly out harness lead. I'm fairly confident that this should, yeah, so this wire should be able to fit. So I'm going to manually terminate this to that connector, and then we'll run the black lead, the ground, to one of these bolts here, these Allen key bolts. So this is the little bracket that I've made up, and as you can see, I've put some nutserts on there, drilled it out, and it's going to sit something like that. However, I do need to notch a little bit of this out there of the original unit. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to chop out some of this stuff here, and then we'll mount that back up onto the tank. All right, banger. So I've just mounted the fuel sender up. Look at that. So a couple of washers there, a couple of washers under there. Earth is mounted to that, and that mounts up into this little connector here, and all sorted. So I've terminated the original sender into here now, no joiners, and that's all sorted, so we can plug that in. And now to give you an example of how it sits, so I've brought it up off the floor of the tank, so that way I know when it's empty, I've got whatever the difference is of that. I've got a little bit more fuel left. Not much, but it's a little bit more. So I've lifted that up, and yeah, I'm happy with that. Alright guys, so another day has passed, and where I'm up to at the moment, I've just installed the fuel pump module in the tank. I've cleaned and painted up the tank, and I've also installed a little breather nipple onto the fuel neck, which I'll show you now. But yeah, it's come up well. And now what I'm going to do is, if anybody is looking at installing a aftermarket fuel tank, an aftermarket dash for your car, if you're looking at going like an aftermarket type ECU setup and dash, I'm going to show you the ohms reading that you'll be able to plug into your dash, and practically get your fuel level set up. So 100% will be like, you know, certain ohms, and then 0% will be a certain ohms. Plug that in, and that should get you started in setting up like a Haltech IC7. All right, so what we've done, well, cleaned it up, painted it up, it's come up mint. I'm very happy with it. Now I've ordered a vented gas cap. Actually, this is one for maybe you guys out there. The fuel tank has a little breather here that originally went to the charcoal canister. Obviously, because the fuel pump module is sitting lower than the top of the tank, I've put the breather off the fuel pump module over to the filler neck. And I'm gonna keep this. I'm just gonna put a hose out because I'm not sure if will I need a rollover vent. So that to come out up here, maybe up there, and put like a rollover valve or some sort of like a check valve to release if the tank builds pressure. From my understanding, with a vented cap, it only allows pressure in. So I'm not quite sure what we're gonna do there. Yeah, if you guys have any tips on what to do there, going to like a intank fuel pump setup, do I need to have some sort of like a breather to vent to atmosphere? I'm not going to be running the charcoal can anymore. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts? How should I set up? Do I need a breather? Yeah, throw a comment down below and let me know. All right, so what we're checking now is the full marker. So putting the multimeter on. So 11.2. All right, so 11.2 will be the full ohm reading, and now we'll do the empty. 72.3, around 72 ohms. So around 72 ohms or 72.3 full. So if you're looking at setting up a Haltech or some sort of aftermarket dash and you need the ohms reading, there you go. Alright guys, so what we're up to, I'm just going to make a quick breakout harness for the fuel pump connector. So I've marked out on the connector, you'll see there's like an A and a D, and then in between will be B, C. So I've just marked out here, B is ground for fuel sender and C is going to be for the fuel gauge, and then A and D, one of them is going to be power, one of them will be ground. So what we're doing now, I've got some terminals, so I'll cut these. Handy little side cutters for doing like little terminals like this. You can get them from Jaker. One connector. I just wanted to see how 12 gauge wire sat in the connector, and yeah, it sits up mad. So let's go ahead. I will strip back some insulation, and then alright, now because these terminals, I believe they're for 14 gauge, I'm gonna just remove a couple of strands of wires, just so we can get the terminal nicely crimped. Alright, beautiful. So what we'll do now, I'm just going to go to the bin. I'm going to cut back all these little strands, and then we'll put the rubber seal on and we'll crimp it up. I'll actually show you. So this is a 2-stage crimp, just due to the thickness of the wire. So I put it in the 16 and 14, and then I go to the 2018, but I don't put full strength, just a nip. And that's that. And then with the rubber seal, I've got another crimper, and if you can see, it has like round crimps instead of like an F crimp, and that's how you crimp the rubber seals. Done. Now, this is going to be, yeah, either the power or the ground. Alright, so now we've got all the wires crimped at the terminal side, and now I'm going to just use my little diagram there and we'll pin this out. So just looking at it here, you can't see, so that says A there, so that'll be B, and B was ground for the fuel sender. So I'll go stick that in now. And then the fuel sender gauge wire.
There we go. So there you have it. They're all seated correctly. And then what we do, we put this little locking collar over the top. And this will hold those terminals in. Alright guys, so when crimping terminals, just a heads up, right? You want to leave a little bit of insulation stripped back from where the terminal butts up. I'm not sure if you can see, but yeah, just so you get an idea, you want like a little bit of insulation. It's just for a little bit of like strain relief when the terminal, or when you bend the wire on the, when you bend the wire and the terminal's still butted into the connector. So we're using Deutsch DTP connectors, which are up to 25 amps. All right guys, so the wiring connector and that little breakout loom is all sorted out. Here we go. So we've got the connector there, and then got the little breakout. So for the fuel sender, for the gauge, and for the fuel pump. So I've used a DTP and a DTM for the gauge. And when we go to slot this in now, and there we go. All the fuel lines sorted. Let's get it in the car. All right guys, so we are how many months after installing the fuel tank? I don't know, I'm gonna have to say like it's probably been about 3 months since you watched those clips there of me installing the fuel tank and doing the wiring on the pump setup. I've now finished off the fuel lines, so ran all the hard line underneath the car and the return lines, and also set up the injector rail, which is now custom. So I'm just going to take you guys through, I guess, the fuel filter underneath the car, the lines, how I've run them into the reg, and then into a little pressure block, which I've got for my sensors. Alright guys, so where we are up to now, you may notice, I'm not sure what we can see here, but it is a so this fuel rail here is off a Ford XR6 Barra, so turbo, non-turbo, same deal. I've chopped 2 injectors off the rail, and we've just welded a -6 on the end there, and then again at the back there was the original fuel reg, which we've cut off, and we've now just welded on another -6 end there. So we've got our Teflon line here, -6, and yeah, we've got the standard Barra injectors as well. What else? So yeah, the port spacing, if you have a look there, it's beautiful, fit up well. The reason why I went to the Barra fuel rail is the original one that I do have, and I'll go grab it. Barra rail. There we go. Now, as I was welding this up, it just had pinhole after pinhole after pinhole. Again, I think over here, pinhole after pinhole, and I just got over it. You know, is what it is. I just gave up in the end chasing the pinholes and went with something easy to weld up, stainless, and there we go. So all sorted. We've got then we go into hardline here, into the fuel reg. So we're using a Turbo Smart FPR 1200 with the -6 ins and outs. We've got -6 return here, and then we've got the pressure feed here from the gauge port that runs into a little block there that I've got, and then we can see mechanically the fuel pressure here, and then on the other side of that block I've got the oil pressure sensor, which comes up from the block down there, which goes to the turbo and so forth, so we can get a measure on the oil pressure, I guess, that's going into the turbo and the engine, and so forth. So that's the bay fuel system sorted, and then we can go up underneath the car and have a look at how, I guess, I've ran the lines to where we're at now. So I'm just gonna see if we can see this, but so we run the hard line, and then that goes up just having a look here, around over the top of the diff, and then at the back of the exhaust there. So that's the fuel filter there, all sorted. So now I'm actually running -8 equivalent hardline, so 1/2 inch, right way up until there, where it breaks off into the adapter, which then feeds into -6. From there it goes into -6 up to the fuel rail. Later on down the track, if I ever want to go, you know, uprate the fuel lines, I can just put a -8 off the end of that hard line and then straight up to potentially when we do the barra. But yeah, so that's the fuel lines sorted, and I guess that's where we're up to. So yeah guys, that's the fuel system sorted. Happy with that, turned out great. I have already cycled the ignition and we've got no leaks, so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stick around, we've got some more content coming shortly, so yeah, thanks again guys, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you on the next one.